Welcome to Game Film, where we dive deep into the minds of advisors and industry leaders. In each episode, we uncover the stories behind their victories and achievements, offering you invaluable insights and lessons to help you grow and succeed. So, sit back, relax, and let's roll the film.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Jordan Hutchison, and today I have with me Ben, the president of Flourish. Thank you, Ben, for joining me on Game Film today.
Thanks so much for having me, Jordan. I'm excited for the conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this chat. We've had a lot of great feedback. We've had so many advisors that are fans of Flourish, and you guys came on the scene and just like hit the ground running. And so I was really excited when talking to your team and learning more about just all the stuff you're doing. And every time I see like new features coming out, I get really excited because I think that so many advisors, we'll talk about this more, I don't want to spoil it, but there's just the industry's changing. I feel like you guys have such a good pulse, and like you're going towards a feature that is really going to be encompassing the advisor practice. But in Game Film fashion, I always start off our conversation with what would be your come out or walk out song if we already talked a little bit. You're not you're not deep into the sports world, but if you had to have a song, say you're going on stage to speak, what would be that song to get you in the zone?
I was a completely mediocre high school varsity hockey player, and we walked out to Hell's Bells, which is just about up there, all-time walkout great. So I'll go with that.
That is just a strong, solid. Always like I feel like at the end, like maybe in like a year review, like Spotify does for all of us, I need to like encompass all the ones that come up in the pod, and that is one that I know comes up often because it's just such a classic with it. But no, it's
classic and universal. You're not going to offend anybody with that answer. Everybody understands it, old, young, you name it. So it's solid across domains.
100%. My father-in-law would be proud if I told him that was one of my jams, because he is a big classic rock, heavy metal guy. All right, man. Jumping straight into the question. One thing that I always find is so unique, because you've worked for some great companies, and I always love seeing like how people got to where you are, because you're the president of an awesome company that's had such like good feedback that advisors have like loved working with. That how did you get into the financial services profession?
Sure. So when I was 11 years old, I think it was, my dad gave me a book called The Only Guide to Investing You'll Ever Need. And I have no idea why it just clicked with me as some 11-year-old, but got really into personal finance from a young age. And that kind of passion and interest just grew and grew and grew. Graduated college and found myself in a B2B marketing technology startup. So absolutely nothing to do with financial services, but kind of cut my teeth, big formative experience in my career. It was watching a company go from 15 people to 200. But all along the way, didn't care all that much about marketing technology and kept the personal finance interest up, and was, probably the unofficial, unpaid, unregulated, certainly personal financial advisor to my group of friends, something that I still very much do day to day. And I was never interested in the high finance side of things, but very much, how you manage a portfolio, why HSAs as secret superpowered saving vehicles, you name it. That side of the industry really got me excited, or that side of the business. Had an opportunity after doing B2B marketing technology sales and operations for a few years to join Betterment, the robo-advisor. And I saw my personal finance interests and aspirations in a company. And I also saw interesting technology startup. I actually helped them launch a 401k B2B division, which I still maintain is probably one of the best uses of a robo-advisor out there. So was early there, kind of continuing my career and furthering their mission at that time. But from then on, knew I would stick in the advisory wealth management world, but again, always with a very personal finance bent to it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and you're 100% right on that about the 401k space and like the robo of it, or just like simplifying it. If I even like step back on it, because it makes me think of like how like TSP plans, which there's like a handful of funds in those, and that's why it's just works so well, because it's not something you need to get really granular. You don't need to be actively trading that. You just need to be like doing the good behavior of investing, saving, and just like, constantly reviewing and rebalancing, of course, but like there's just so much value in just the consistency of it. But no, it's great. And of course, that's a huge company, and you got a good tilt of the behavioral piece of getting to see like the client experience with the marketing, with the great tech, and then also all the personal finance, because there's a huge opportunity in the personal finance space. But so you're the president of Flourish, which has been a great company and great partner for us at RFG. Could you give us just like the brief overview of Flourish and what you guys are doing right now?
Sure. So would start with our mission, our North Star, which is really to help RIAs grow by evolving from holistic advice to holistic implementation. And so to unpack that, I think financial planning in many ways is becoming the dominant chassis, you could almost say, that advisors are orienting their business around. That's not a controversial statement, but the world of pure investment management, probably more of a thing of the past, and really anchoring around holistic financial planning is where we see the industry today and going in the future. But there's a pretty curious gap there, which is when you ask advisors, where do you actually help your clients implement? Where do you help them execute? Or you turn it around and think of the consumer on the other end of it. Like, what is your advisor doing for you? You realize that most advisors are still very much confined to the world of stocks and bonds when it comes to implementation or execution. And that does not get away from all the amazing work that advisors do from a planning perspective. But if I ask you, Jordan, as a person, what does your financial life include? You get things like banking, and my checking account and my credit cards are pretty darn important to my financial life. You get the entire world of insurance that's out there, whether that's term life or some other sort of protection product. And you start to unpack these threads and you realize the modern advisor, REA, very good at the holistic planning, very good at the investment management, increasingly sophisticated, even things like tax and estate. But there's huge parts of their clients' financial lives that just kind of sit on the sideline. I might bring it up in a quarterly meeting, but it's not something I, as an advisor, can help do. I can't help execute. I can't implement. And that's, as advisors, I'm sure know, is at least 50% of the battle, if not more. So formative kind of value statement. That's the business we're in. To get a little bit more tactical, we're a 95-person technology company based here in New York City. And we're best well known for a product called Flourish Cash, which is a high yield cash management solution that's really built to allow advisors to help their clients with the cash that has historically sit in checking and savings accounts, like excess cash, held away cash, we'll often term it. And right then and there, I hope that connects very clearly back to that vision I just identified. When we came out of the scene back in 2018, we saw advisors really good at managing anything in the portfolio. But man, their clients had a lot of cash sitting in checking and savings accounts, often at banks, often earning zero. And advisors were either blind to it or just didn't have solutions, didn't have tools, could not help. And so really, again, orienting around that flagship product, we now are very fortunate to serve 850 or so different firms, have about $6 billion in assets under custody, built and knocked out integrations with everybody from eMoney and Orion down to your Addepar, Right Capital, Wealthbox, Redtail, all around this idea of take an interesting, valuable financial product, like a solution to help with excess cash, and then really tie it into the RIA ecosystem so that they can move beyond just talking about the planning side of things and actually move into that advice and implementation and execution for things that go far outside of the portfolio.
Now, you gave a great, I actually love the vision you sat there, and it'll be something we have to dig into in a couple minutes, because it's really how I've always seen Flourish when you guys came on the scene. And it's kind of a deeper conversation in how the industry's changing in the advisor's role. So we'll have to unpack that in a second. I want you to tell me a little bit more about, you touched on them there, like with your integrations. Can you give like some examples of some of the work you were doing? I know that you guys, have had an eMoney integration and you just went deeper with it. I love seeing things like that from a person who's in the trenches with our advisors, always wanting like more and more of those things. So do you have any examples or of some of the new integrations? Like, tell us a little bit more about those.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little story around it. So Flourish Cash, I'll first just say for clients, they earn a really competitive rate. We offer it through a network of underlying program banks, so we can offer millions or tens of millions of dollars of insurance, FDIC insurance coverage. No fees, no minimums, really easy to use. So you've kind of got a solution for excess cash, excess savings, a savings solution, if you will. So that was, plus or minus the product we brought to market years ago. Although of course we've continued to refine and make it even better every single day. That's not necessarily what makes us special. What makes us special is trying to deeply pull it into the advisor ecosystem. And this is kind of moving from advice or planning to execution. It's not good enough to have a great client solution. It's how is this going to help an advisor from build their business, grow their brand, serve clients, and how can they do that efficiently? And so you get things like advisors can brand the solution. They can view client balances, details, beneficiaries, you name it. They can hook it up to their custodial accounts, push and pull money back and forth from a Schwab or Fidelity into Flourish. And so if, stage one in some ways was a great client solution, stage two was build all the things an advisor would need to bring into their practice. We kind of get to a stage three, if you will, of even just that one core product, which is how do I tie it into your workflows? How do I make it so that is seamless for you to bring a client Flourish Cash when it's the right solution to bring to them without disrupting your day-to-day, without breaking the other systems that you're using. And so even from that perspective, integrations have been quite a journey. We started with reporting integrations, just kind of table stakes. If it's a financial product, it's got to show up in Orion, Black Diamond, Addepar, Tamarack, you name it. So that was our first initiative of integrations. The planning tools like eMoney, kind of wave number two. And now current generation, after we've hopefully satisfied most of the RIA industry by market share, is again, thinking about those more embedded type of experiences. And so I'll call out two different directions that's going. One is maybe a slightly more obvious one is getting really deep with CRM. We are rolling out right now an integration with Salesforce. And the goal here is an advisor never even has to leave CRM and could click a button to send a client an invite, could pre-fill all the client information, could have that data round trip and get back into Salesforce. And so for an advisor who builds their life around their CRM, which not every advisor that describes, but there are plenty, just that idea of I'm updating the client meeting notes and I click a button and a Salesforce invite or a Flourish invite goes out, like contextually right then and there is really, really powerful from an efficiency perspective. So Salesforce, Redtail, Wealthbox, that's been one flavor. The one we are, I don't want to say even more excited about, but really, really excited about is we just announced a really deep integration with eMoney. And the idea here, we are trying to solve a joint challenge with eMoney, really on this exactly down the money advice to implementation. eMoney has wonderful data. How as an advisor can you make that actionable, and how can you do that, efficiently? So we just rolled out this cash management optimization integration. And what it would allow an advisor to do is directly with eMoney's decision center. So if you're an eMoney user, this is your desktop. Whenever you're sitting down with a client, you're looking at Decision Center, you're looking at the financial plan. There's now what eMoney would call an optimizer button that says, hey, show this client what it would look like if they moved all of their low yielding cash to a higher yielding solution or a competitive rate solution. So click number one, I can now visualize, hey, Jordan, you've been a bad client. You haven't kept my advice. You got way too much in cash, but it's earning 1 basis point at JP Morgan Chase or whatever it might be. Click a button and I can actually illustrate within the financial plan itself. It would make this difference to you and your retirement goals if you were to move it into a more competitive yielding solution. So that was piece one. And then piece two for the advisor. And by the way, if Flourish is that solution for you, click a single more button and you can send an invite out directly from eMoney Decision Center. So that's half the integration. The other half is being able to do that across your book. And so directly within eMoney, open up their analytics tab and sort across all of your clients who's got the largest low yielding cash opportunities. Again, if Flourish is an interesting solution for you, directly embedded invitation experience. Click, click, click. To my knowledge, there's not too many things like that out there. I think this was a bit of a first for eMoney of this foray as well, really combining the great things they do from a planning perspective with then some really actionable insights for an advisor downstream to, and if this makes sense, click a button and that client has a Flourish invitation seconds later. Really is a great example of the round trip that you get of how do you embed these things deeply in the advisor workflows and tools.
I love that. And it's you and your team, that's such an insightful integration because like one theory or like hypothesis that I have, like how the industry is going. I mean, there's so much of like, oh, owning your data and like creating that experience. One that I've like seen and I've ideated with some people in the industry about is how powerful the financial planning software is, that there's a potential future that some of the things that you would normally do in other places all could or should start from the planning software. Like where you mentioned being able to open an account or send that invite from eMoney. I think that there's a potential future for advisors that like they're living in the CRM and the financial planning software, and that's about it. I mean, like, obviously there's other things that they're going to have to do outside if you're wanting to do some more advanced planning or you're wanting to model for something else or you need to go to the custodian for something. But I think even with some of the future, they could be controlling certain custodial things from the planning software. And that's why I love that integration with eMoney, because one, as a person who used earlier in my career when I was an advisor, I used eMoney. The decision center has been like, that's like arguably like one of the greatest features in our industry from a planning software, because that's where like the human behavior, the client experience, all that happens in that moment, because you're like, all right, Ben, you want to do this, but you're fearful that this is going to happen. You can just sit and toggle things off. And then they added the optimizer piece. So now you get to see like the exact impact if we open these accounts, and then you could do it right there. So you're removing friction, which is, not for the conversation today, but like that whole, our chief behavioral officer, I've chatted with him in length about this, the advisor implementation gap. So it's that, the academic term would be the action intention gap, of cutting that down, because we give, as planners, great recommendations or great advice, and then somebody just doesn't do it. So like, how do we remove the friction from that? So I love that integration with eMoney, and I love that example. So, and the Salesforce one, we are Salesforce users. And so we've started digging into that one more, because it is a central location for everything. And so many enterprises, it becomes your like hub for everything. So I love that. Great story on that one.
And I'll say from our perspective, I may share a lot of those views. Also, as a vendor, we need to integrate everywhere. Because some other firm says, hey, we live our entire life around Orion, Black Diamond, Tamarack. That is the source of truth. That is the center of the world. And great, need to plug in there. And then also, like you said, also recognize there's many different personas within a firm, if you will. There's that client-facing advisor, and then whether you call it middle office, back office, client services, whatnot. And so it might contextually make sense like, hey, Jordan, we need to train your advisors, the most client-facing, planning-oriented people. Like this eMoney tool is really, really powerful. But then also, hey, like the invite didn't go out, I'm leaving a note in CRM and somebody else is picking that up and running with it. And so I think it's a key challenge we have, and something I think we've done fairly well, is build with all of those different people in mind, all keeping in mind, like the goal is reduce friction. I love that term, like how do we narrow the gap? And Flourish Cash, again, to pick on that, is such a core example of advisors love the idea of it. And we've been very, very successful. But with every firm, you find some advisors use it and build an entire business around it. And then some advisors are like, hey, I haven't opened an email Jordan sent in the last 6 months. Like, how do we get them, hooked? And there's no magic bullet, but certainly like recognizing, hey, I can meet you where you are is an important part of that journey.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And that's even like, we align with that at RFG, because we are, bringing on firms, but we, our advisors, we want them to build their business without compromise. Like, we don't want to limit you on building the business that you want to build. Do you want to be the $1 billion shop or $2 billion shop? Awesome. Let's get you there. Do you want to have 100 million, 2 employees, and really, like just love on your clients and have that? I mean, some of them hate this term, but like lifestyle practice. Some people want that, and that's okay. And I think that there's more than one right way to do it. So I love that you guys, from a vision standpoint, from your leadership, you're seeing that like we're building this, but we're also building for whatever fits your practice and like what your needs are as an advisor. I love that. So speaking on, the depth of the product, are you able to share any of the like Flourish roadmap or things you're going to be releasing, or new stuff that maybe already is out that we're just not aware of right now?
Sure. I'll give a couple of quick hits. So have anchored a lot of the story around Flourish Cash. It is what we are most well known for. Beginning of this year, we launched an annuities platform. And idea here is There are hundreds of billions of dollars of annuities sold out there in the industry, basically none in the RIA channel. And we took a really hard look at this in partnership with some of our largest clients and realized the financial products, quotes, are actually great. And some of them really, really, truly benefit clients and the way that RIAs build portfolios, things like that. And man, is the operations and the experience completely broken. So huge focus of ours this year has been really rebuilding the annuities experience from the ground up. So an unlicensed insurance, an advisor who has no insurance licenses, doesn't know a lot about annuities, has heard, hey man, don't these things have 90-page PDFs and terrible applications and all these good things? We've had that advisor enter our product, Flourish Annuities, in 15 minutes, often through the help of a CRM integration, pre-filled 3 different applications for an annuities ladder, which doesn't exist in the industry. Click a button, signature, totally digital by clients, data round trips over to Orion or Black Diamond or whatever it might be. So annuities, we won't spend as much time. I think Flourish Cash is a fun one for conversations like these, but also trying to break off a big part of the insurance industry and just recognize that experience is broken. And for annuities to ever make their way into the RIA channel, of course, the products themselves have to be good, but I can show you right now, there are examples where a product called a MIGA basically looks like a bond, if you will, is a higher yield on any imaginable stretch of the imagination based on your brokered CD, corporate bond, treasury, and advisors just aren't doing them because the experience is broken. So A lot of focus there. And I think if you watch Flourish, you'll see just announcement after announcement as that business is still in those early formative stages. Hopping over to Flourish Cash, I will give 2 quick examples here, which I think illustrates we need to deliver both an amazing advisor experience and an amazing end client experience, and they are both incredibly important. On the end client side of things, we just rolled out same-day ACH transfers, which, I almost hate to say this, is sort of kind of revolutionary in financial services, that I can click a couple buttons in Flourish and have my money back in my bank account 3, 4, 5 hours later, or whatever it might be. We can have a whole separate conversation about blockchain and hype and promises. Like this one is real. And so really excited to introduce that one to the world and just recognize a core concern whenever somebody's thinking about cash is how quickly can I get my hands on this thing? And so really excited to be not quite at the forefront, but very early in that journey where tens and tens of thousands of transfers through Flourish, every day, every week, every month. Now that's just magically showing up in a couple of hours the very next morning. That's an amazing end client experience. And then the other one is a big focus of ours. We've since early days had this referrals feature where end clients could refer their friends and family, and it would basically generate a lead to the advisor. We are in the process of doubling down and supercharging that feature. And so you can imagine a world, let's just say, Jordan, you're my client. You refer your friend to Flourish, and really dynamically, your friend is then filling out a very lightweight, hey, are you interested in speaking with an advisor? What's your net worth? What's your income? And all of that information comes back to the advisor in question. And I think every advisor knows referrals is a huge source of business. What if we can use a great financial product and great technology to automate away some of it, or to surface insights that the end client is not thinking of, and then you as an advisor just have the experience, hey, I invited 100 clients to Flourish, and I log in 3 months later, and hey, there's actually a couple of leads sitting on this dashboard. I think advisors know this. You provide amazing service, your clients refer each other. Can we be a vehicle for supercharging that? So we've had this referrals feature since 2019, in the final stages of completely revamping it and driving some real business to advisors.
Those are 3 great ones. The Flourish annuity one I think is so powerful from somebody that I grew up on the broker dealer side, knowing that side of the business where, depending on who you are, I'm not going to, throw any shade to any of the companies or anything like that, but sometimes there's a lot of, lore that annuities are sold from the wrong perspective. And that's kind of gives a negative connotation to the RIA, fiduciary space, where they're like, oh, annuity, bad word. Like, I'm not insurance, scary. And there's so much value. Like, I think people that really understand core of financial planning and the importance of it, in some situations, annuity is a great product for it and a great resource adding to the whole holistic plan. And so I think that it's going to help so much with just changing the dynamic and giving these advisors opportunity, because it's an area they kind of like strayed away from because there wasn't a model for it. They didn't know how to like, should I charge on it? Should I just not get paid on it? Because, you know, there's the underlying of certain assets might be different for me. Like it doesn't work for the RA only space. So I think that's going to be such a big one because there is a big value for it. And insurance historically, for someone that works with, you know, tech and operations, data, like getting information from there is really tough. And so having a vendor that will be able to give me more insight to that is going to be great. The other one it made me think of, that third one with the referral side of it, the timeliness. So much like research shows us that like the timeliness of like information or referral is so important. Being able to just like, as someone signing up, put that information in and be like, hey, this person might be worth it. I don't think a single advisor would ever be sad about that. Like that's such like a key thing that like and it's awful. We always want like raving fans of our business. So I think that's such a great win of it.
And I'll just say quickly where it came from is a lot of the number one value prop why people sign up for Flourish is because they want to help their existing clients. Great. Organically, what emerged is that advisors were using Flourish quite a lot in their prospecting efforts. And one of the early stories I remember, this is, within a year of us launching, is two business owners sold a business. One of them was a client from a pretty big multi-billion-dollar RA in the Pacific Northwest. That was their client. And they said, hey, I've got this FDIC insured solution that, it provides a couple $1 million of FDIC insurance. Can you provide that to my business partner? They don't have an advisor, but that seems like a great place to park the cash. Guess what? That's a conversation actually converted over to a client. And we started to realize, man, first of all, clients, I think, like talking about things that they have a good experience with and enjoy. But there's that, this is a way that advisors can deliver some real value before an advisor agreement has been signed and then start a conversation or continue a conversation. So if we can supercharge that with technology, I mean, that's hopefully magic to most advisors' ears. Yeah,
I love it. I think that's a great example, and that's perfectly how it is laid out. So moving on, I think you mentioned some of this earlier, and it's definitely something I wanted to discuss with you. You mentioned the way that when you were saying the vision of Flourish and how you frame things, I firmly believe that the advisor's role is changing. And it sounds like, some of the undertones of what you said of the way that you said it, holistic financial management. Is that how you framed it?
Going from holistic advice to holistic implementation.
Implementation. That was it. Holistic implementation. And so I am a big believer in the roles changing. So you were able to add the cash management side and the banking side to the industry or the independent side. You've changed the game of giving the advisors this tool where historically it always kind of stayed just with planning, just with maybe investment management. And they never really thought about the banking piece of it. They always just kind of leveraged having to use either maybe a custodian or going to the local bank that these people use. Now they have a much better experience. I mean, what is it, sub 5 minutes basically to sign up for Flourish? I mean, it's so quick. Where do you see the industry grow? Because you guys had a ton of growth. Where do you see that advisor's role changing, in the wealth management space? Because you're adding new features. It makes me curious. Are you guys looking at it that way? That's why you're adding different pieces?
Yeah,
I know I asked you multiple questions.
This is more of a personal take than necessarily the Flourish party line. But I think I can see a world where 10 years from now, the expectation is that consumers want one single financial relationship. And this is the dream. I mean, this is what the great wirehouses are already executing on, but this is what your Betterment and Wealthfront and SoFi and Robinhood, all of them are marching towards, where you at RFG in 10 years want to be able to say to a client, hey, you can actually fire your bank. You don't need another insurance relationship. We do all of that for you. Or we assist in doing all of that for you, however you think about it. And so I think financial planning is the chassis. That's the backbone. What does that mean for that end client? They want their financial life to be easier. And so can we help advisors say yes. Like, yes, we do that to every aspect of their clients' financial lives. And so I don't think I'm giving anything away to say, does Flourish Cash become Flourish Banking with a whole suite of products and services there? And does Flourish Insurance, annuities become Flourish Insurance? And through that, we've now, through your existing custodian, you handle all of the investment management needs. You're coming to us for all of the banking services, all of the insurance services. Now we're talking about people's holistic financial lives being served by their financial advisor. So I think that's both the expectation of the consumer in 5 or 10 years is going to dictate what advisors, how they want to build their business. And then it's, up to vendors like us in partnership with advisors like you of making that a reality.
Now, I completely agree with you on that. Like 100% believe that the advisor's role with technology is going to become where a lot of those services are encompassed with just one person or one team or however you want to frame the structure of the firm. Because I even think with there's a talent shortage in tax, that's arguably worse than the talent shortage in financial services of finding just good talent, people that want to do the job. That technology is going to be able to consolidate that and be like, look, this, because there's products that are out there already that can help model some of that. I was talking to an advisor in our shop the other day, uses an AI product called Blue Jay, which allows him to review up-to-date tax and estate law. So when he's literally, it's almost like having his own advanced planning team. He doesn't need an attorney or a CPA to ask questions. He's an enrolled agent, and he's able to actually process the tax return as an advisor, and he's also a CFP. But now he's using technology to have those questions to double check that maybe the state regulation here is a little bit different. He's becoming and he's one of our fastest growing firms. He's becoming the centralized location for all of it, and he just has technology or relationships, and he's actually a user of Flourish as well. And so they come to him for banking, they come to him for tax, they come to him for, and like you said, planning was the backbone, but it tied in all those other things. And so I'm in full agreement. I purposely didn't set you up for that one. So if any listeners don't think I didn't prime that one, but I'm in full agreement. I really think that that's where we're moving. So you're a leader at such a great company. I've always heard great experiences from Flourish. You've had tons of great leadership roles in your past. I always want to leave people with something, and I have one more question after this, but can you leave us with, you've been scaling some great fintechs, you've got extensive experience as a leader with these fintech companies. What are a couple nuggets that you could leave with, advisors? Because I see them as entrepreneurs running their business, or other SaaS entrepreneurs building or wanting to build a fintech.
Great question, and probably depending on who I'm talking to and what I did earlier in my day, I could have 20 hours of different insights and learnings and all the ways I've screwed up over the years and gotten a little bit better on the other side. I'll try to think of a few that are maybe actionable. One thing that I do that I think is a little bit unique is every time I hire a new person, I wrote this doc, about 2 pages, not overkill, but it's how to work with Ben Cruikshank. And here's some of my quirks and things I care about and things I expect from you, and how we can have a productive relationship. And I think that was born out of two things. One, every time you're building and scaling a business, you hire somebody new, it takes months before you are working together and gelling. How can I short circuit that? And so from week one, we are having kind of open, honest conversations, feedback in both ends. How to keep me happy. I know how you operate. And so one of the really cool things, I think that invites a little bit of reciprocity if people share back to you how to, why do we work together? I said there were 2 reasons I did that. The other is because my wife was like, hey, Ben, you're kind of difficult sometimes. Maybe you should just warn people. I was like, I think, fully acknowledge. I move fast. I want to get a lot of stuff done. I have things I really care about, things I don't care about at all. And so that's concept of a user manual, I think, is a really cool one. And you think about advisory businesses, I think a lot of trust is so important. A lot of that could help people go a little bit faster. Not really specific to fintechs, but I think is a cool one. The other one I'll throw out, which is I think is part and parcel of it's in that user manual. Is initiative and iteration. And I am just constantly hardwired to look around and think, man, we could be doing things better. And I have a lot of humility because I was the one who set a lot of these things up, and like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I'm just figuring it out every day and getting a little bit better. And so I tell everybody in my organization and my team across the company, new people join in, people looking for jobs, like, be the person who just like constantly looks for problems to solve and makes them a little bit better, is the initiative side of it. And then the iteration side, everything is a first draft. Nothing is perfect the day you do it. I will never write a perfect email or perfect brief or like whatever it might be, and have the humility to invite that spirit of iteration from everyone around you. Like in our organization, junior engineer, I want you empowered to, like, when I throw an idea out there, be like, we could do that a little bit better. So I think humility is a big part of it.
For sure.
But just that spirit of nothing is necessarily done. We can always get better and iterate as you go.
I love those. And because that first one, it makes me think of like setting expectations and just having clear, like there's a quote always, clarity is kind, and like giving that like expectations to setting so that people know, like, this is how I work. This is my expectations as a leader. Like, it's going to cut down on all that. Like, how do I figure this out? Did I read them right? Am I reading this situation? Because any high functioning person's probably going to either meta game the situation or overthink it of like, am I doing this right? Am I hustling like or getting what's done the right way? I love that. And, we actually use a phrase, we have a huge sign of it here in the office that says iterate to excellence. And whenever Shannon Spotswood, our CEO, brought me on for when she was recruiting me to come over here, and I saw that and I was like, God, that like resonates so much with me, because I remember there was this paper that like someone shared with me a long time ago when I first got into the product side on the vendor, when I was on the SaaS product side. And the actual term, I won't say it because they'll probably would have to bleep it out, but it's basically a crappy first draft. So anyone want to add the S to it, they can Google that and find it. But your compliance department might pick up that word on there, so be prepared. But it's actually
that's funny. I constantly say I want to see bad first drafts. Just get it out there, get it out in the world. Like, don't make it perfect. I want bad first drafts, and I am the author of so many awful first drafts, but it gets the conversation started.
It's it's so true, and that's how we get better. Is you've got to get it, because you got to have the action to move forward. I love that one, and I almost want to end on that because that one resonates. Like, that takes up space in my brain, but because we're coming to the end, the last question I have is because I always see things and like, if we can't figure out the right goal, how do we know what we don't want? And what is the worst advice you've received?
That's a good one. Don't want to name any names here. First company, let's just say sales were a little choppy one quarter. Leader walks in and says something like, you guys just have to work harder. You should be anxious on the weekends. And man, did that strike a young, 22, 23-year-old. It's just like the worst thing, like demoralizing and uninspiring. And like, what am I supposed to take away from that? And your prior question, like lessons in leadership here, the way you walk into a room matters. Like you need to constantly balance, how do I motivate the team? But also I'm contemplating some huge strategic decision that none of these people necessarily know about yet. Yeah, and I just received some bad news a minute ago, and I don't know, somebody gave notice or something. We lost a client, we lost a contract. Like, that's your job as a leader. And never, ever, ever underestimate, like, how you show up matters. And even if you are feeling a tremendous amount of anxiety, like, internalize it, go splash water in your face, like, get up and think about, like, what is it the team needs to hear right now to do their best work. And so that probably all time, just terrible advice that's stuck with me. And I think everybody in that room that day was just like, man, is this a person I want to work under? Like, I don't know.
That is like the best closing response I think I could ask for. Like, cause I believe it too. And that when you take on like the journey of like being a leader of a team, even just like one team, whereas you're leading a whole company, and it starts from the top, the behaviors from that. I mean, like, we don't have to pull out academic papers or interview, I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg, whatever the giant, company, that it's so important, the behavior that you're bringing to the table and the energy like you bring to the room, because everyone that works for you is going to feed off that. And it's so important. So I love that answer. And Ben, I've loved having you on here and chatting about all this. You've left us with some great nuggets. So I appreciate you joining us on Game Film today.
Yeah, so appreciate everybody who took the time to listen. You can learn more about Flourish on flourish.com. Follow us on LinkedIn, connect with me. Always happy to chat.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you for listening to the Game Film Podcast. Click the follow button to become notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.rfgadvisory.com. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It's not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. Information here may be provided in part by third-party sources. These sources are generally deemed to be reliable. However, neither our guests nor RFG Advisory guarantee the accuracy of third-party sources. The views expressed here are those of our guests. They do not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, its employees, or its clients. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by RFG Advisory or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Securities offered by registered representatives of private client services. Member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, LLC, RFG Advisory, or RFG, a registered investment advisor. Private client services and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place. RFG Advisory is an SEC registered investment advisor. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of RFG by the Commission, nor does it indicate that RFG or any associated investment advisory representative has attained a particular level of skill or ability.